welcome to this vlog. Today I'm going to talk about something not so usual. I have been creating things about Latin recently, about Polish. Things sharing how I learn Latin, how I learn Polish. But yesterday, I don't know why. Well, I know why, because I want to. In my mind, there is an idea of making another video or another article on learning, on some methods of learning. I've been taking notes here. But what I came across while studying the subject, because of course I can't just prepare a short video based on nothing. I printed some materials from the internet. I took some books, and I've been reading now. I started reading it yesterday. Language to this book by Dulay, Bird, and Krashen, and I find it very interesting. And I haven't proceeded very far. I'm still in the first chapter, well, or second chapter, because the first one is overview. But it's also kind of review of the things that I've learned when I was preparing for TESOL. And what I see here, my alarm clock, it's morning, and I forgot to turn it off. But what I see here in this book, there is a great emphasis on so-called silent period. And the silent period, let me read it for you. What is a silent period according to them? I don't know if there is a definition. For example, it has been found that a silent period at the beginning of the learning process, during which the learner simply listens to the new language and is not made to produce it. And this silent period, according to this, greatly enhances the speed and quality of learning. And this is based on observations not only on children, because of course when children are born and they learn their first language as children, they just listen. It's not a thing that they somehow produce the language from the beginning, but it's also observed on some experiments with second language learners. And this is so second language here is language that we learn when we are over 5 years old. And it doesn't matter if we live in a country where the language is used or we'll just learn it in a classroom. The silent period is, according to them, a very useful thing. So, what are my observations about this silent period? As they say, it's so good and could be so beneficial. They say when adults do not force them to speak, children acquiring a second language typically exhibit a silent period for 1 to 3 months or so. It's page 22 in the book. This silent period could, and I can agree. First, my opinion, yes, I think there is something like this, that the silent period allows the learner to acquire new things, to acquire the words, the sounds. This is very important. The sounds of language, the melody. Yes. So then it's easier to follow it when actually learning, or it has already the patterns of the language in his or her brain, and it's easier to reproduce them. So what I personally think, that would be great to introduce the silent period into our teaching. How? But this is the big question, is how do we do it? Because quite often people who come to our classes, I'm talking now as a teacher, they want immediate results. They want to speak from day one. And sometimes they want to be perfect from day one, and that's why they have this ambition to understand all the rules, know all the words, and then they're so disappointed that there is not such a result in a very short time. But people often forget that learning a language is not a 2 months or 3 months thing. It's a adventure for years. So in this case, I would say that it should be really well prepared and somehow the demonstration should be limited maybe to what they call here restricted two-way communication. So the student only nods or gives very short answers like yes or no for 1 or 2 or 3 even months. So we don't force them to do a lot of production. Also, the homework that we give shouldn't be production. I mean, it shouldn't be, I know, writing sentences or something. Maybe it should be something more like watch a video, listen to a song, or something like this. It's very difficult because people pay for it and they don't see, let's say, immediate results for a short time, and that's like a difficult thing to go. One would have to really explain it to the customers, to the students. The same thing is at schools. Yes, they force teachers to prepare students for exams, and you have to grade the students of the first semester, first month. But how can you grade such a thing? So that's difficult. But what can we, as now, and I'm speaking as a student, what can we do if we are studying a language? Here it is the thing is much easier. I think before starting a language, it's good to find materials, easy materials, that would be the best, for just, like to wash your brain with the sounds of the language. Sometimes you can watch some videos on YouTube. You can watch maybe some cartoons. These are very good. Not much language in a cartoon, funny, interesting thing. This is how I learned English at the beginning. I watched a lot of cartoons, videos in English. Maybe it wasn't the silent period, so before, but I was lucky enough that my father could get some tape cassettes, videotapes, and I could watch some films, cartoons as a child in English before I started learning English as a second language, like in school. And we can do it also in our learning process. So this is, for example, especially if children are concerned, Muzzy in Gondoland. I remember this TV series, it was wonderful. I really liked it. The older version, the new version, has such crappy graphics. I hate it. But the older one is like so nice and interestingly done. I think that you could, of course, you can't do it for English, but you could use it for other languages. I know there were also published for French, I think, Spanish, and maybe some others. So just start with it. Maybe listen to some podcast videos. It might be that if the language you want to learn is similar to yours or to one for example, Polish, you want to learn Russian, Spanish, you want to learn Italian, it's much easier to understand more sophisticated texts. So you could read or better, I think, listen, so watch, to things that are interesting for you. Now, let's say that if you are interested in astronomy, watching a documentary on YouTube or a blogger who speaks about astronomy in your target language, which you already somehow know by comparison to your own or other languages, that might be really beneficial. That you could learn a lot from this. So passive learning at the beginning could be done. The problem is with the rare languages, like me learning Uzbek, I found very little resources to learn Uzbek, and definitely not something like this. So I have to rely on one vlogger who is Uzbek, I think. He speaks Uzbek. And he lives in America. It's Bag Vlogs, which is very difficult for me to understand because he's like very often just sitting and speaking very emotionally with full of energy, not like me today in the morning. I still drinking my morning coffee and trying to survive, by the way. And this is something you could do, something. So I do when learning, I try to watch him even though I don't understand a word, or just a few words. It gets more difficult when we're talking about Asian languages. How can we do it with Latin? First of all, many people would say, oh, we don't need to acquire Latin. So Latin as language acquisition is maybe not the most important thing because we learn Latin to read Asian texts. Yes and no. Yes, we learn Latin to read Asian texts, but having this passive period at the beginning, which would facilitate also Latin production, let's say, I think it could be useful. I think it could really, really help people to understand it better before, they dive into everything. So that would be good for people who learn. Right now, there are not many resources for that. So maybe watching Scorpio Martiano's reading his videos, reading Familia Romana. It's a textbook for Latin. Somehow, just before you do anything else, just watch the first few videos about it. Watch some other of his videos just to get the sounds of the language, structures maybe subconsciously, and maybe latinitium.com. It's also a good idea. There is a lack of, let's say, cartoons in Latin, so something you could, or TV series maybe in Latin. No things like this in good Latin. I mean, so with good pronunciation and really interesting. Not just amateurish productions, which are great. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but sometimes it's difficult to hear what people are saying, and actually they just recite it. It's not actual acting. So but anyway, so somehow get into the language first, and then wash your brain with the language, with some basic structures, and then later produce it. This is the problem before a school, like a summer camp, when you go to learn a language. I was on a summer camp a few weeks ago. It was Latin, Greek. So you expect, and I expected also, that I would start speaking Greek in this case, because it was let's say nearly from zero, from day one. Same thing was for Latin, for people who came there. So of course no one would give you 2 months period on 2 weeks course of 2 months silent period, but you can do it yourself before you go, or before you go to a country to live there, to on a course there, etc. So according to this, again, Krashen language 2 in chapter 2, when a language environment is considered, a lot of good input before we start producing language would be useful. And if it's only possible, let's try to give it to our students, and if it's only possible, try to find it for yourself. Okay, so these are some actually morning thoughts. It's morning right now, and I've been reading this just now, and I thought, this is so important. This is something that we so often forget, and we don't do it. We are so impatient. And I am impatient. I know this is my sin. This is my sin. I want to do the language immediately, produce it, create things, which is also, I think, good because it's a motivation. It's I'm eager to learn language. But if someone is not so eager, or wants to try a different way, maybe this silent period would be useful. I would also advise, the last thing I want to say is to use the silent period technique before coming back to a language after a break. So if you have been learning English, let's say any language for a few years, then you had a few years break, so you forgot something, and maybe you haven't, but you think you've forgotten. It would be good to give yourself, before starting whatever course, individual learning, with Duolingo or other apps, or having a private teacher, find some time every day, that would be the best, to watch something in English, in the language. I'm saying English, but in the language you're learning. A TV series, a cartoon, and whatever you like. Maybe, as I said, some interesting vlogger talking about the topic you're interested in, so that you can just get the language, acquire. You don't produce it, you just get it. You're interested in it, that's the best thing. So you want to learn the language, you want to get the information that someone is giving you, and so your language skills will have this warm-up time before actually diving deep into the language and really using it. Okay, so I hope you liked the video. It was maybe not so energetic, because I usually make my videos in the evening when I have more power and energy, but I know that I'll be busy and I really wanted to share it with you. Thank you for watching. If you have any ideas how to implement silent period into one's learning or teaching, leave it in the comments below. And if you tell me what you think, what's your opinion about language 2? I made a mistake and I corrected myself. Tell me what you think about this, and tell me what's your idea about implementing the silent period into your own learning. So not only theoretically but practically. Can you imagine doing it yourself? Thank you for watching it again. If you like the video, please leave those thumbs ups and things like this. You can subscribe to my channel and I would be very, very grateful for it. You can also support me on Patreon, because I'm creating things that help people learn languages, especially Polish, and I do things for Latin. Sometimes I do also some advice how to learn languages, like videos like this one today. You can also visit my blog, ioannesoculus.com. You can find me on Facebook at Ioannes Oculus and this fan page. And hope to see you again. Bye bye. If you like my videos, please subscribe to my channel. This will really help me a lot. Find me also on other social media platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Mind, and many others. Let's keep in touch. See you next time.